The Architecture of the Peculiar Soul by Joshua David Ling. Look, I've been thinking about a lot of walls lately in this really concrete sense of what it means to be built into something larger than yourself. And there are these two visions of walls that couldn't be more different. Two totally opposed pictures of what it means to belong to something. To be part of a structure bigger than your individual existence. My dad used to play Pink Floyd on repeat when I was growing up. Vinyl records, plastic discs, the whole thing. He had this collection, and honestly, The Wall wasn't even his favorite. He preferred Dark Side of the Moon, and he'd tell me so. But Another Brick in the Wall still got played, and man, that song lodged itself in my memory. You know the one. We don't need no education. Teachers, leave them kids alone. It's this angry, defiant anthem against institutional control, against being crushed into conformity by a system that doesn't care about you as a person. The song tells this story of a wall being built brick by brick through trauma and oppression. Every bad experience, every moment of institutional cruelty, every time you're treated like an interchangeable cog in a machine. That's another brick. You're being built into this structure, but it's a structure of isolation and death. The Wall in Pink Floyd's vision is about being reduced to coordinates on a grid, being stamped with a serial number instead of a name. It's collectivism at its coldest, utilitarian maximalism where individuals vanish into the mathematics of the greatest good for the greatest number, and the greatest is always defined by whoever's already in power. In those halls of learning, cold and gray, where minds are molded day by day, the message is clear. Conform or be crushed. You're just another brick, and the machine will grind on with or without you. But here's where it gets interesting. My dad also read me this other story about a wall, a completely different kind of wall. The tale my father read. There was this book on the shelf, light beige cover, purple and dark green text, Wise Words by Peter Lightheart, and one of the stories was called The Bleeding Tree. My dad would read from that collection with warm smiles and no hesitation, and this particular tale stuck with me in a way I couldn't quite articulate at the time. The story goes like this. There's a tree living in a forest, relatively happy, doing tree things, but this tree hears these beautiful sounds coming from a nearby church, and it yearns to understand where they're coming from, to see inside of that building, to be a part of whatever's creating that beauty. The tree prays this wouldn't be a sin, just wanting to see, to understand, to participate in the glory it can only hear from a distance. Then the church falls down in a storm. Renovation begins, and the tree gets chopped down. With tears, the story says. It's a death. A real, painful death. But when the tree wakes up after this gloriously painful death, it discovers something incredible. It's been made into a wall in the cathedral, and now it can see all the glory he had only glimpsed before, and it reverberates with the sounds of the saints forevermore. This wall doesn't confine, it contains. It doesn't restrict, it resonates. The tree doesn't lose its identity when it becomes part of this larger structure. It fulfills its identity. It discovers its purpose. It's not given coordinates on a grid. It's given a role that only it can fill. Two walls, two destinies. So how can both these pictures be true? A wooden wall with a wonderful view and a terrible wall of conformist might? A structure that reveals your glory and a structure that stomps it out? Because these two walls represent two different destinies. One above, one below. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice the difference. The kingdom of heaven, and I mean the actual kingdom, doesn't seek to stomp you into a mold ununique. It shows your glory's true and reveals your new name to you. That's the cathedral wall model. You die to yourself, yeah, but you wake up as something more fully yourself than you ever were before. You're not obliterated, you're realized. Meanwhile, the wall in Pink Floyd's song cares only about itself all along. The only identity you get is your position in the grid. You're interchangeable, replaceable, fundamentally insignificant except as raw material for the machine's purposes. Here's what's particularly messed up. The church sometimes acts in the opposite trend of what it's called to be. That's the tragedy we're living through right now. Institutions that should be cathedral walls, spaces where individuals flourish in their distinctiveness while contributing to something magnificent, too often become the other kind of wall. They demand conformity, punish all innocuous deviations, measure worth by compliance. They act like hell's powers stomping on any and all. The fight we're in. This is the fight we're caught in, whether we realize it or not. Wall against wall of dark against light. And the stakes couldn't be higher, because this determines everything about how you understand your existence. One system says you're destined to disappear in the many, to be absorbed, processed, standardized. Your value is purely functional. You're another brick, and if you break, they'll get another one. The other system says you're meant to fulfill a single role and not just be any. You have a unique calling, a specific purpose that nobody else can fill. You're not meant to vanish into the collective, but to discover what you were always meant to be within it. The tree didn't become less of a tree when it became part of the cathedral wall. It became more fully what it was meant to be. That's the critical distinction. Sacrifice and transformation, yes. Death and resurrection, absolutely. But not erasure. Not obliteration. Not reduction to a serial number. The Bardic Warning. As someone trying to make substantive Christian art in this cultural moment, I see this confusion everywhere. We've got this whole generation that's spiritual but not religious. And I get the impulse, I really do. They're reacting against institutional walls that crushed them, that treated them like bricks to be fitted into predetermined slots. But here's the danger. In running from the wrong kind of wall, they're also fleeing from the right kind. They're so scared of being reduced to a cog that they refuse to be built into anything at all. They want the beautiful sounds of the cathedral without becoming part of its structure. That doesn't work. You can't resonate with the songs of the saints if you're not part of the walls that contain and amplify the music. The calling for Christian artists, poets, musicians, filmmakers, all of us, is to help people see the difference between these two walls, to translate the vision of the cathedral wall into language and imagery that speaks to people who've only ever experienced the conformist wall. We need to show what it actually looks like when the kingdom does not seek to stomp you into a mold ununique, but instead show your glories true. We need art that's thick and theological, enough to carry the weight of this vision. Art that demonstrates how dying to yourself and finding your true identity aren't contradictory, but complementary. Don't just be another brick. The poem I wrote about this idea ended with this line: "So don't just be another brick in the wall." And that's the message, isn't it? But not in the Pink Floyd sense of pure rebellion against all structure, all authority, all belonging. Rather, don't accept coordinates on a grid when you're promised a new name. Don't disappear into the many when you're called to fulfill a role that only you can fill. The question isn't whether you'll be part of a wall. You will be. We all will be. The question is which wall? The one that crushes or the one that sings? The one that erases or the one that reveals? The one built by hell's power or the one built by the kingdom of heaven? That's the choice. And in a culture that's confused institutional structure with institutional oppression, that's conflated all walls with the wrong kind of wall, we need artists willing to do the hard work of showing the difference, of painting the picture of the cathedral wall so vividly that people can see it's not a prison, but a home. Not a reduction, but a realization. Because the tree that became a wall didn't lose itself. It found itself. And that gloriously painful death led to seeing all the glory and reverberating with the sound of the saints forevermore. That's the wall worth being built into. That's the destiny you were made for.